You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Bible Guys. It is Friday if you're listening day to day, and so
It's an important day.
Yes.
It is an important day because it's everybody's favorite segment.
Well, that's not the because, but
in a world full of injustices.
There it is.
What made Chris mad this week?
That's right. That's good. I like it.
Yeah?
Hey, I think you should introduce it that way every single time. In Chris's world.
Yes, just full of injustice.
So typically when I am asked the question, what made Chris mad this week? I would say the majority of the time. Wouldn't you say that my complaints are against sort of like dumb people
And bad customer service.
Yes. And
or people who don't take their carts back.
Yes. And I get mad for the
on
masses.
behalf of us. Yes, for the little
masses.
people.
Yes.
Yes, you are mad for me and all the other little people in the world.
Well, this week's a little bit different because
it's vicarious anger.
I'm still mad for the masses.
Okay.
I'm not just mad for me. I'm mad for the world.
Yes.
That they have to experience what I'm going to complain about.
Okay.
But I'm mad at time.
Time.
Because my knees aren't holding up the way that they used to. I'm working out and I'll step wrong and literally all of a sudden now I go like this. I step wrong and I go, and my wife goes, what was that? I'm like, I don't know. Right. And then like you bend over and your back's like, oh, or maybe you'll twist. You're in your car and you twist and you go grab something and all of a sudden like this pain comes up. And it just won't, go away for a minute. Mm-hmm. And then I also realized that when I was 30, if I wanted to drop to 10 pounds, I could do it in 5 minutes. It seems like, right?
Right.
And it seems like the older you get, right?
The harder it is to lose weight.
The harder it is. And I have been recognizing lately that yes, I'm currently right now I'm not overweight. Currently, right now, I'm eating well. Currently, right now, I'm working out, and I'm doing all those things. So, like, I'm definitely being active. So it's not as if you could look at me and be like, "Okay,
you're not being active.
Come on, Mr. Slabaruni, get off the couch."
Right.
So I'm being active, and because I'm being active, I'm recognizing how much I am not a friend of time. I don't like time.
You don't like time.
I'm mad at time currently. Oh. Yes.
But you're getting so distinguished. Time is making you like this distinguished.
Okay, so you're saying
guy.
There's some benefits of time?
Yeah.
There's this much benefit. There's this much drawback. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Which I would even argue that that's pretty subjective.
Okay.
Right? But I really think time is a terrible thing to deal with.
Wow.
Yeah. Don't you agree? You're the same age as me.
Yeah. People ask me that. People get frustrated with that. I don't feel bad about being my age. I like my age every year. I never dread a birthday. I'm like, oh, I'm getting so old. Everything like, I don't play softball very much anymore. Right. I loved baseball and softball. I don't play it much anymore because that season of my life is over. But I'm a grandfather now. How cool is this? And I'm in a place where finally, financially, things are getting a little bit more stable. And I feel like I have a patience and a wisdom I didn't used to have. So I like my life today. Okay. And I don't resent.
None of that is that what I'm talking about. I'm talking about physically.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Because everything you're saying is great.
My left knee is a little goofy.
Yeah.
But I just always keep thinking I should go get it fixed, and I haven't. Uh-huh. But I don't know. I never think of it like, oh man, I wish I wasn't old.
You don't think of it as, oh, that's new. When I'm working out with my trainer and she's like, hey, do this. And I go, oh, and she's like, what's your problem now? And I'm like, hang on, you have to rest for a minute because it's an old person thing.
Yeah.
Or she'll say, do reverse lunges. And I'll go back.
And she specializes in like geriatric exercise.
No, she does not.
She sure does.
She does not.
All of the old people we send to that trainer.
No, that is not true.
Yeah. So if you don't know, if you're a new listener, the church that we pastor at, Heritage Church in outside of Detroit, Michigan.
You always like to tease.
We have a gym.
Yes.
The Heritage Fitness Project.
Yes.
And we have several trainers.
Which, by the way, it's a great gym.
Fabulous gym.
Yes.
Right. And we have several trainers.
Yes.
And your trainer is the one that also trains all of the old people.
My trainer used to be, ready for this, for a living, she did physical therapy. Mm-hmm. So she was an actual PT person that became.
She's fabulous.
Yeah, which means she contains knowledge for those up in age that other people do not contain.
Yeah, that's what I think I was saying.
So I would say the wisdom.
She specializes.
The wisdom of Chris May, who leads the thing, would say anybody who's a little bit older, go to her.
Yeah.
Because she's better.
She won't hurt you like other people hurt you.
No, that's okay. Well, actually, that is true.
She'll give you modified exercises. Well, because the young people do the regular workouts.
Yeah. When I had 2 meniscus surgeries, she knew every modified exercise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. She does not specialize in geriatrics.
I love that. I love busting your chops.
Yes.
No, she's great though.
Yes, she is great. Yep. But I'm mad at time.
Mad at time. Okay. Well, thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I wouldn't have even thought to be mad at time for people.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you're closer to heaven.
Did you ever see the movie with Will Smith? Where he's mad at death and time and love?
No.
What's that called?
I don't know.
Anyway, yeah, he's actually mad at time.
Okay. Nope. I'm not. Not yet.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you, Chris, for that. I know many of our listeners probably...
It's called Collateral Beauty.
Okay. No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I'm sure many of our listeners are grateful for your concern.
Thank you.
Yes. And if you could do something about it, then that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a parking lot and you see somebody not put away their cart, you can just yell at them, put your cart away. What kind of person are you?
Yeah. Well, this one, yeah, you're right. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. But if you can work it out, if you can work out a solution for this time thing, then...
let us know.
Yeah. Get to work on it.
No problem. I'll let you know.
Well, thank you. Oops, I just dropped my phone here.
The only way is to get to heaven before you and to convince God to change the system.
Yeah. That's
which is not going to happen.
Okay, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get to heaven for me?
Well, I mean, I'm a pretty good influencer, but probably not.
He's not
good.
sure he's getting to heaven. People, you heard it here first.
Do you remember the old 1970s movies? Oh God, remember Oh God?
Yeah, with George Burns.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not very biblical, but there's a conversation. Oh God, in Oh God Book 2, where he's having a conversation with a little girl. And she's real small, and they're walking together. And she goes, God, why did you make the giraffe's neck so long? And he goes, to eat off of the high trees. And she goes, why didn't you make the tree shorter? And he just looks down, he smiles, and he goes, where were you when I needed you?
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of us who really help God out.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, hey, today, do you have a transition for us?
Yes. Speaking of. Wait a minute. I did the Oh God Book 2 quote, so I got to go back to the time. Speaking of time, we are going to skip over the time that Solomon built the temple because that is a lot of time, and we're going to skip over to the time where he actually dedicates the temple.
Okay, to the dedication time, not the building time.
Correct.
Okay.
See, it's a terrible transition.
That was a terrible, which is our goal. Our goal is terrible transitions. So if you're a Bible reader, which I hope you are, there is something really special about these chapters that talk about the glory of the temple.
Yes.
It describes the exterior being just massive. The interior is magnificent. You remember, this is a building that is worth billions upon billions of dollars with gold and silver and all these things. It is an unbelievably magnificent building. And then it talks about the furnishings. And I mean, King Solomon went all out when it came to the glory of God's place, right? The temple.
Well,
and in the life applications,
he loved his father.
Yeah.
And he honored his father.
Yep.
And his father really set the precedence for this thing because it was actually David's brainchild.
Yeah.
And it was David's passion, right? And his sacrifice.
That's correct.
So, yeah.
So then in the Life Application Study Bible, there's a couple of cross sections and some pictures and those kinds of things and tons of notes. And so honestly, we're skipping 20 pages here of really great stuff that if you would, go back and read it. It's found in 1 Kings and then also in 2 Chronicles. These two passages or two books kind of highlight the same basic stories. So we're going to be reading from 2 Chronicles chapter 7. And it says, when Solomon finished praying, right, he prayed this amazing prayer about everything comes from you, and you are great and glorious, and all these things. It's really great. And then it says, when Solomon finished praying, fire flashed down from heaven and burned up the burnt offerings and the sacrifices, and the glorious presence of the Lord filled the temple. I think it makes me think of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? Yeah. The priests could not enter the temple of the Lord because the glorious presence of the Lord filled it. When all the people of Israel saw the fire coming down and the glorious presence of the Lord filling the temple, they fell face down on the ground and worshipped and praised the Lord, saying, He is good. His faithful love endures forever. Then the king and all the people offered sacrifices to the Lord. King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000 cattle, 120,000 sheep and goats. And so the king and all the people dedicated the temple of God. The priests took their assigned positions, and so did the Levites who were singing, His faithful love endures forever. That's their song. They accompanied the singing with music from the instruments David had made for praising the Lord. Across from the Levites, the priests blew the trumpets while all Israel stood. Solomon then consecrated the central area of the courtyard in front of the Lord's temple. He offered burnt offerings and the fat of peace offerings there because the bronze altar he had built could not hold all the burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sacrificial fat. For the next 7 days, Solomon and all Israel celebrated the Festival of Shelters. A large congregation had gathered from as far away as Lebo-Hamath in the north and to the brook of Egypt in the south. On the 8th day, they had a closing ceremony, for they had celebrated the dedication of the altar for 7 days, the Festival of Shelters for 7 days. Then, at the end of the celebration, Solomon sent the people home. They were all joyful and glad because the Lord had been so good to David and to Solomon and to his people Israel. So Solomon finished the temple of the Lord, as well as the royal palace, and he completed everything he had planned to do in the construction of the temple and the palace. And then one night, the Lord appeared to Solomon and said, I've heard your prayer, and I've chosen this temple as the place for making sacrifices. At times, I might shut up the heavens so that no rain falls, or command grasshoppers to devour your crops, or send plagues among you. Then, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, will forgive their sins, and restore their land. My eyes will be open and my ears attentive to every prayer made in this place. For I have chosen this temple and set it apart to be holy, a place where my name will be honored forever. I will always watch over it, for it is dear to my heart. As for you, if you faithfully follow me, as David your father did, obeying all my commands, decrees, and regulations, then I will establish the throne of your dynasty. For I made this covenant with your father David when I said one of your descendants will always rule over Israel. But if you or your descendants abandon me and disobey the decrees and commands I've given you, and if you serve and worship other gods, then I will uproot the people from this land that I have given them, and I will reject this temple that I have made holy to honor my name. I will make it an object of mockery and ridicule among the nations. And though this temple is impressive now, all who pass by will be appalled. They will ask, what did the Lord do, or why did the Lord do such terrible things to this land and to this temple? Is that where I end? One more verse.
Yep.
And the answer will be, because his people abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, who brought them out of Egypt, and they worshipped other gods instead and bowed down to them. That is why he has brought all these disasters on them.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So up to this point, there had never been a permanent address for God.
No, right.
There was the tabernacle, which was a mobile, even though it wasn't, it was very stationary in one place for long periods of time.
But they would pick it up and move it.
They would pick it up and move it.
It was tents, essentially.
Yeah,
right.
tents. Yep, and it was elaborate.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not a circus tent
right.
where you put up in one day. But however, it was mobile, and but this is the first time where brick and mortar and stone and gold and silver and everything else comes together, and it is the most. I would imagine it is probably the most elaborate building, maybe perhaps ever created in human history at this point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, if you get in and read the descriptors, I mean the everything covered in gold, the magnificent design of it, but then it was so delicately made that there were leaves on this one thing inside the temple. There was a tree and there were leaves, and each of the leaves was independent, and when the wind would blow through, the leaves would rustle. But it was made out of gold, right? It was phenomenal. The artistry in this it's the peak. It's the pinnacle of everything that had ever been made in the world up to that point, right? And you and I, we've been to the pyramids before. I've been to all kinds of pretty amazing things that happened before this time.
Right.
But I've never seen anything that even came close to the intricacies and the delicacy of how fabulous and ornate this building was. Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. So it's got to be one of the greatest structures ever built.
Yeah.
And God says, "Hey, listen, I'm impressed. I like it a lot.
Right.
Don't mess with me or I'll destroy it.
Right.
Because this building is not more important to me than your heart."
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
What you built for me is not more important to me. If you cheat on me, this building means nothing to me. That's what he says. Right? I'll destroy it and the world will mock it. And that's really amazing that even then in this great act of worship, God still only really wants the heart. Thank you for the nice gift, but I want the heart.
Because the temple for God is just a vessel for, this is where the sacrifices will be.
Yep.
I'll hear the prayers in this building. That's the promise. Yeah. And as long as you worship me, this building will be important to me.
Yeah.
If you don't worship me, I'll make a mockery of this building. So yeah, you're right. It is only important because of the people. It's only important because God's chief desire is to have a personal relationship. And by the way, that's a sermon altogether, isn't it?
100%.
Because, people think that, that Jesus, sometimes they would claim or think that Jesus came to start a religion. Jesus didn't start to start a religion. He came to start a relationship, right? With you and with me. That's his chief goal. That's God's end game. From the very beginning was our relationship restored with our Heavenly Father.
Right.
And then also, we're to understand that God wants us more than our obedience. So what does he say in the Old Testament? He says it's more, obedience is more important than sacrifice. The human response is more important than 1,000 burnt offerings, right? So it's always primarily the person over action, and it's over in this case the temple, right?
Right.
Which translates today into churches.
Yeah, it's always the person over religious action.
Right.
What God's saying is you're demonstrating your love for me by how you behave.
Yeah.
And he said when you decide you're going to go after other idols, when you're going to decide that you're going to reject my law, then he said there's going to be consequences to this. And to the point where he finally says, I'm going to set this aside and I will hear your prayers here. I'm going to make it holy. The idea that God makes anything holy just means the word holy for us, we think means perfect, behaves in a perfect way. Holy for God means it's set aside for me. It's not for you, it's for me now.
Right.
Right? And he says, so I'm going to make this holy. When he says that he's made us holy, it doesn't say he's made us perfect.
Right.
It just means that he's set us aside for him now. We're not for us anymore, we're for him.
Right. Yeah, set aside, consecrated.
Right. And so now it's mine, and if you pray here, I will hear you here. Because there's going to be times when you're going to get into sin. There's going to be times when you're going to disobey me, and I might have to send some grasshoppers to wipe out your fields, or I might need to send some things to remind you that you're here for me and that we are supposed to be together, and remind you that your pride is coming up in front of us. He says, so if these things happen, one of my favorite verses in the Bible, he says, then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I'll hear from heaven and I'll forgive their sins and restore their lands. He said, my eyes will be open and my ears attentive to every prayer made in this place. I want to connect with you. And the minute you realize you're heading in the wrong direction, and you realize you're my people, if you'll humble yourself, remember James and Peter both tell us, humble yourself before God, and in due season he'll lift you up, right? God resists the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. He said, humble yourself first, and then confess your sins, right? What does he say? Humble yourself, pray, seek my face, turn from your wicked ways. He said, I'll hear and I'll forgive and I'll restore. It's one of my favorite verses in the Bible.
So before I moved to Michigan, I worked at a church for 7.5 years at a small, little, tiny church. Then I went to a large church, and I was there for like almost 4 years. And I started a college ministry for college students, and I was a college pastor. And they built a brand new building, educational building. They had a Christian school, and we met on the 3rd floor. So we kept on saying, hey, meet on the 3rd floor, meet on the 3rd floor. So I developed a name for our ministry, and we called it 3rd floor. And I based it off of the temple. And what I said is that I sort of gave the pitch that the closer you got to God, you had to go up a level. So, there was sort of the outer courts at ground level, and then there was a set of stairs, then there was the other courts for the priests, and then there was another set of stairs, and on the third level was the most holy place. It was God's presence, right? And then what I basically said was, and this was I'm giving you not the right explanation, but basically it was based on Hebrews 4:12, where it says, now we can go boldly into God's throne, right? And make our requests made known to him, asking for grace and our help in our time of need. And basically what I said was, the moment that Jesus died on the cross, the veil ripped in two, I said, and then God's presence ushered out and into everybody. So God was not confined to an address. And so I said, in that moment, I said, everybody was welcome to the third floor. That's what I said, right?
Yeah.
I said it's an invitation that says everybody's now welcome to the third floor, right? And so I sort of pitched that, and everybody's like, oh, that's really cool, man. Welcome to the third floor, right? So we got on the third floor. Our ministry took off. It went from 9 students to like 85 students in not a college town. It was really big, right? And then when the student center was finally remodeled, we moved from the third floor of the educational wing down to the first floor of the student center. And everybody on staff said, well, obviously you're going to change your name now. And I said, no. Well, why in the world would you ever call it third floor if you're going to be meeting on the first floor? I'm like, you never got it, did you? Were you listening? Did you go to Bible school, Pastor?
The goal is the third floor.
Pastor Rick.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, that was the idea. So God's presence equaled the third floor.
So now we know that God did keep his promises when Israel finally did totally defy him. Sometimes substantial time after this, God allowed Babylon to come in and destroy this temple. And for 70 years, people did mock Israel, and they'd walk past this destroyed city and mock them and wonder why God did that. Then Nehemiah came back. They rebuild the city. They eventually rebuild the temple, and then it gets destroyed. And then King Herod builds it. Then it's destroyed in AD 70. There's never been another temple on the Temple Mount again. Right now, there's a mosque where the temple used to sit in Jerusalem. But Paul tells us after the cross, when God tore the veil in the temple from top to bottom, he literally did open the door for everybody to have access to God. Then Paul says, we are the temple. He said, don't you know that you're holy people, that God has made you the temple? So then glorify God in your body, right? Your body is the temple of God now. So if that's the case, you always qualify for that verse, if my people who are called by my name. You are his people. Right. And you, in your moment, you don't have to go to some holy place. God's called you and made you holy. And so you can go boldly before the throne of grace, and you qualify for this promise that you humble yourself and you pray and you turn from your wicked ways and you seek him, and he'll forgive us and he'll restore your land, right? And there's a lot of power there. So all the promises, I believe, that came along with obeying God, honoring God, the temple, the blessings, the miracles that God did as a result of the temple, I think every one of those is available to those that are followers of Christ now, because we are the temple of God. Which then makes me think, I think a lot of times as Christians, boy, we sure do paint a lot of graffiti in God's temple. Yeah. We sure do a lot of dumb things with God's temple now. I would think we would think of our bodies and our decisions with our bodies, our life, the things we listen to, the things we do, the people that we're interacting with, who we sleep with, all that stuff. If we would realize that this literally is the temple of God, we sure do abuse it a lot. Sure. Right? Yeah.
And I just want to say, maybe one of the closing thoughts could be, this is such an unbelievably popular verse, isn't it? Then if my people, who you already referenced it, right? Yeah. Then if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, I would hear them from heaven, and I will forgive their sins and heal their land. It is definitely something that we always see when people say we need to pray for our nation. We need to pray as a people that we would, turn back to God. And so we, as followers of Christ, need to always do our best to make sure that we are contributing to move God's kingdom forward, so that we would always be a people corporately that would do our best to turn back to God. Because, hey, the promise given back then is given by the same God who says the same things. Yeah. Right? We just turn from our wicked ways in any state that we find ourselves in. We humble ourselves, we recognize God, and then he will hear us. He will forgive our sins and heal our land. That's
fantastic.
That's a great verse.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's our time. So hopefully we will see you on Monday on the Bible Guys.